to the Real Estate Investing Made Simple Club. Hello, hello. And we do live interviews with experts and leaders in the real estate investing world. And I'm LeAnn Riley, real estate coach and broker, and I help people get started or scale a portfolio without confusion or fear with my proven profit formula coaching program. I built a $14 million portfolio in residential, multifamily, condo development, commercial, and vacation properties. I like the vacation properties. Anyway, I lead the Encore investment team of realtors in the Twin Cities, Minnesota. And check out my YouTube channel, LeAnn Riley Real Estate, and be sure and subscribe when you're over there. And remember to stay on after the speaker today, because we are networking and you can meet other investors and you get a chance to introduce yourself and talk deals. And today's topic is home inspections, a closer look, like under the microscope, right? And our guest today here is Jeff Manders, and he's with Gadget Home Inspections. And he's been inspecting houses for over 15 years. And he inspects with detail and precision, and we want that. And yes, he will crawl into difficult areas of concern. I loved that when I saw it on his website, because you know what? You're right. Some inspectors are squeamish, and he will crawl into that attic crawl space, or that, I'm thinking of the dingy basement with that hole and then there's dirt in there. Yep. I always wonder what's in there, and I don't want to look. So hi, so glad you could join us today. And gosh, such an interesting topic, inspections. So I just want to start with, tell us the weirdest thing that you found on an inspection.
Well, there's been a few. One of the weirder ones is I was at a house in North Branch, and I opened the sump pump basket, and there was probably 24 garter snakes in the sump basket.
In the basement.
And all their heads just popped up right out of the water. So they were feeding on some bugs that were entering into the sump pit or sump basket. So that was interesting. Let's see. I've had I was at a house not too long ago that was it was also a mortuary at some point. So there's a room off the garage that had a bunch of mortuary equipment. So that was a good one. And then last summer I got bit by a bat, which is kind of wild. Yeah, it was outside. I was seeing which, it was a condo unit, and I was trying to see which vent was connected to this person's dryer. And I was on my ladder and I reached my hand up into a vent to see if there's any air coming out. And I thought I got stung by a bee. But I shined my flashlight up there, and there's a little fat brown bat. So yeah, rabies shots, the whole thing. So that was probably, that was one of the more interesting experiences. But yeah, there's a lot of them. They happen often. Yeah, lots of good stories. But
ooh, those garter snakes, I don't know. I was walking on a trail last week, and one went across the trail, and I'm telling you, I jumped back.
Yeah, you're not ready for them.
No,
that's for sure.
So first, we're going to take a poll here of you people listening, and it's real quick here, folks. I'm going to throw up some questions. I just want to know where you're at in your real estate investing interests here. And so there's this poll here, and I just threw it up. All you do is make a quickie vote. Are you just getting started? Are you a fix and flipper, a buy and holder, maybe a house hacker, student housing, short-term rentals? What's your game here about real estate investing? We like to see, so we make sure that we answer questions you guys might have. So it looks like I'll leave it up for about, let's see here. Oh, there's another vote. All right. And then I'm going to end this poll, and then actually it shows you the results, which is cool. Here's the results. We have some how to get started. So that would make sense, because people who maybe haven't bought need home inspections, right? And there's people here with the BRRRR strategy. That would be the buy, fix, BRRRR. Help me out here. Buy, rent, rehab, refinance, and repeat. There you go. Whew, that's a tough one.
BRRRR.
All right. So I closed the poll. Now we're back. So now we're going to get started. So we've got some people just getting started, and we're going to talk about why you need that home inspection here. And then questions, we'll take questions as we go along. And just so you know, there's a chat box, and that's how you're going to, if you have a question, you put it over there in the chat box. Okay. So here we go, Jeff. So first, in a nutshell, what should a buyer expect from an inspection report?
The inspection report, my inspection reports, I try to be, excuse me, as detailed as possible. So I'm trying to provide data on the condition of the house. I put a lot of pictures into the reports, and really the intent, I mean, it varies based on what kind of buyer we have, or sellers do inspections as well. But you know, the goals are different oftentimes. So investors, you know, they're looking at negotiable things, whether it's like a roof or a furnace, you know, high ticket items. If they're going to be renting the house out, various things that are related to occupancy permits and things of that nature. So it does kind of, it varies, you know, there's kind of a baseline of what's in each report, and then kind of specialized for each particular buyer, depending on which circumstance they're in. If they're people that aren't on site, you know, so one thing I do, which I've found recently that a lot of inspectors don't do, is I walk, at the conclusion of the inspection, I'll walk people around the house to just kind of give them some context on some of the things that I'm seeing that they're going to see in the report. And then I can give them some additional information on maybe like how, you know, a lot of times they're first time home buyers or what have you, they might not be as familiar with certain things. So you can kind of be like, hey, it might, you know, the language might look scary in the report, but really.
Uh-oh, we lost your audio.
Sorry, my phone just rang. I apologize.
Oh, okay. That's okay.
I apologize. So yeah, but yeah, really, I mean, I feel like my job is the data provider. So I'm providing the data on the condition of the property, and then the buyers can use that information to either negotiate, just to have a fix it list on various things in the house, various safety items that are important for the house being habitable. Yeah, that's kind of where they start. And then everything else is just kind of, you know, a lot of the stuff that's in the report is based on old building standards. So a lot of times in older homes, there's a lot of things that are mentioned based on, like, you know, handrail height and headroom height. And there's some stuff that you got to preface those things when you're walking through the house, be like, hey, there's gonna be a lot of stuff on this report that's based on newer building code. And, you know, it's just, this is how the things were built back in the day.
In 1920 or whatever. So
right.
I know,
Exactly.
and it looks like a lot on the report, but you can't be concerned. Those are normal in an older house. They're going to get mentioned
for sure. Right.
But it doesn't mean there's something wrong.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. And people do have hard time on the reports, but basically you're checking roofs, furnaces, you know, under the sink, venting, sump pumps,
insulation, electrical, basically anything in the house that's, you know, there's very limited things I am not inspecting. You know, I'm not inspecting, you know, internet cables and, you know, stuff like that. You know, that stuff, we'll see it. And sometimes you see some loose connections, and I'll comment on those things in the report, but I don't test those things. But really anything that's in the house, I'm going to attempt to operate it and then report.
What about, like, what do you, if you kind of see a moldy wall, do you have a meter, one of those meters?
Yeah, so I do a couple different things there. So if I see a moisture stain, I've got two methods really of evaluating that. So I use a thermal infrared camera, which the thermal infrared camera can be pretty helpful for identifying plumbing leaks. So oftentimes there'll be a vacant house, there'll be an upper level bathroom, and you think, oh, you know, you can't see any of the drain piping. But then I'll scan the house with a thermal camera, and I'll see a little cold spot that appears on the ceiling. And that's an indication, okay, there's something going on there. You know, is it just air seeping from the ductwork from the AC, or is it actually like a plumbing leak? So then I'll use that data from the thermal camera, and I'll put a moisture meter on that spot, and I'll verify whether or not it's an active leak or if it's something else. But and then I use a moisture meter in the basement and on slabs in the
That's
basement
great,
to
because
determine if
I don't think all inspectors use that. I have had some where you have to hire extra or for
right.
looking at water or mold possibilities.
Right, and I don't test for mold per se, so I don't do swab testing to send it
Right,
to a lab. So that's kind of beyond the scope of a typical home inspection. But
right,
if you see, most homes will have some level of mold in it. So if someone does an air sample, so the mold testing companies will have a swab and they'll have a little pump and it'll suck all the spores that are in the air. There's usually mold in almost every home, and it's
to
just a
some
matter
extent.
if it's dangerous, and different people have different are more susceptible to health issues for mold-borne illnesses. So but if we see, if I see it, then I'll recommend, getting tested. And there's arguments on that versus, like, if you test for mold, and if you have it, then you have to disclose it. So it's like, okay, should you test and disclose it, or should you just be like, okay, well, it's probably mold, and clean it, and and then keep your eye on it and take care of it's usually related to a moisture issue. So take care of the underlying moisture issue, and then
Yeah, figure out
clean
what
up the
got it
mold.
there.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Okay, and then on that report that comes back, there's a bunch of codes on there.
Yeah.
Tell us about those codes. What are they?
So they vary. So for just a regular buyer's inspection, or if someone's doing a pre-sale inspection, on my reports there's a code for inspected. So just a designation that the item was inspected, and then there's another item that says it was not inspected. So for example, some houses have sealed attic accesses,
Right.
and if I make a request to the seller or the homeowner and say, hey, it's considered invasive to unseal an attic access, so I'd have to ask them for permission. And I also ask the buyer for permission to do that, because I don't reseal those. But if they don't give me permission, then I would notate not inspected in the report, and
Okay.
then I put a notation on why that
Because you
particular
couldn't
item
get
wasn't
in.
inspected.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And then there's a repair or replace designation. So if you have, if there's a old water heater or something that is in need of repair or replace, then you check that off. And then so those are really just the three
Well,
designations.
the one I see on there is the B, which means below minimum standards or
Sure,
something like
sure.
that. That's in those old houses, right?
Yeah, so on truth and sale of housing, or TISH reports, then you've got different designations, like it either meets minimum standards, which is the standard set forth by the city, and each city has different designations on what is considered to be below minimum standards, or meets minimum standards, or hazardous. So yeah, in those TISH reports, it's either meets minimum standards, it's below minimum standards, it's hazardous, and those are the designations on those reports. So hazardous is typically missing or non-functioning smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, exposed electrical wiring, issues with venting of water heaters or furnaces. So things that are, that would certainly cause a
Health and
physical hazard.
safety issues is what I always
100%,
call it.
for sure. Yeah.
We have a question here. Are inspectors licensed, or should I be looking for licensed inspectors when considering who I hire?
Yeah, so Minnesota as a state doesn't have a licensing program for home inspectors. So literally anyone can say that they're a home inspector and perform a home inspection, and that's how it is in Minnesota. Now there's certification, national certifications. So I'm nationally certified. I'm with NACHI, which is a National Association of Certified Home Inspectors. So I'm a member of good standing with that home inspection organization. There's other home inspection organizations too, like ASHI and MAHI, which is a Minnesota home inspection organization.
Do you have to have like continuing ed like we realtors?
I do. So each city, to maintain certification status and good standing with the home inspection organization, it's 24 hours a year for that. And then for each, the cities, for the truth in housing evaluator
So what
licensing.
Jeff's talking about here is, in addition to being a normal home inspector, he is also a truth and housing inspector for what? The city of St. Paul or Minneapolis?
Yeah,
Or,
so for St. Paul, Minneapolis, South St. Paul, and Maplewood.
okay,
So even the standards between those cities vary. Some cities, so that, just to preface that, that program is necessary or required by some cities when you're
right.
selling your home. So
Yep.
if you're selling your home, you have to get this inspection. It's very it's a stripped down version of a buyer's inspection. So for example, on truth and housing evaluations, I don't get on roofs. So for a buyer's inspection, I would either get on a roof or I'd pull out my drone and, you know, take a look at the roof and evaluate it that way. Where for truth and housing, I'm only looking at the roof from the ground. For truth and housing evaluations, I don't open electrical panels, where I do that
Mhm.
for buyer's inspections. And then evaluation on truth and housing for furnaces, boilers, air conditioning units is very limited. So there's a lot of things that could be uncovered on a buyer's inspection that wouldn't necessarily be covered
On the
under
truth
a
and
truth and
housing.
housing evaluation. So yeah, I mean, um, some people will be comfortable looking at a truth and housing evaluation when they're buying a house and see the condition of the house that way. And you know, some things might be uncovered, but there might be more
Well, I
that's not
think
listed on
you
there.
nailed it right there. You don't get on the roof or look with a drone. And I've
Right.
had real estate deals where it was winter. We thought the roof was
Sure.
okay. And then
Right.
of course, when everything
Right.
thawed, no, the roof was not okay.
Right. Right. And that's a limitation that's going to be
That
coming up
is
here, and
tricky.
it is tricky. And you know, obviously you want to see the condition of the roof, but some good tools that you can use when you can't see the roof. So most cities, the permit data is online. So
Ah,
when I do a buyer's inspection, I use a company called BuildFacts. And if the city has their permit data online, I'm able to retrieve all the permit data dating back roughly 20 or 25 years. And that'll provide some good context on what the age of the roof is, um, how much it costs to put the roof on. And sometimes that'll be, you know, it'll vary based on, there's a lot of factors that can impact roof cost. But it's kind of a good to know, like, okay, well, if I'm investing in this house and they got a roof put on 15 years ago and it was $5,000 to put the roof on, you can kind of do some math and kind of figure out, you know, what approximately the roof's going to cost to replace. And then you're kind of relying on disclosure from the seller. You know, if they've had any storm damage, or if you got overhanging branches overhanging the roof, those can impact the condition of the roof
that's
surface. So
that's interesting because I think on that house I'm thinking of, I think that's what happened. They put a new roof on, and of course that was in there and everything. But you know what?
right.
I think the buyer didn't look up the permits, and guess what? They hadn't pulled one.
Yeah, and that happens too. You know, you'll see where, you know, they put a roof on, but there's no permit. I mean,
Yeah.
around my house in St. Paul, I mean, from that hailstorm, I mean, there is, I think 90% of the houses are getting new roofs right now. And usually you'll see a permit, you know, like taped to the front door or taped on a window. And you know, I'm driving around the neighborhood. And I'm not looking very close, but I'll look, you know, like, wonder if they got their permit out just for, you know, home
That's what you look
inspection,
for.
evaluation. Yeah, yeah. But um, so, and attic access then becomes more important at that point, because you can see potentially if there's water staining in the attic, then okay, well, we got a stain, it's active, there's snow on the roof, we can't see it. All right, well, that needs, you know, more evaluation once the snow melts, and sometimes prior to that if it's causing interior damage, which I've certainly seen many times.
Yeah. Well, and now you make me think of another. It was actually an apartment building, and they had an inspector, and they found the rafters, whatever, something was wrong. And they got the
Yeah,
seller to fix that. I mean, it was huge, put on a whole new roof on
yeah,
fourplex. That's humongous
yeah, yeah,
in
yeah. I mean, when you're
negotiating
getting a
power.
when you're getting a new roof on a new property, I mean, that's a huge asset.
Huge. It's a huge ad chest.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, you said that you then invite the buyer to come over and, you'll go through what you found, the big stuff,
Right.
so that
Right.
they could understand.
Right.
So that helps a lot. What if the buyer can't be there because they're out of town or whatever? Do you do this via Zoom or with your
Yeah.
phone?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. We do a Zoom or FaceTime or whatever video application they want to use. Oftentimes the buyer's realtor is able to attend the inspection, and they can kind of act as the camera person while I'm kind of walking around
Oh, that's
showing them
kind of
various
handy,
things.
right?
Yeah, but I've had situations where it's just me, and people have gotten tied up at work or whatever the situation is, and yeah, I'll just walk around just like we're doing the walkthrough
And
normally, and
talk
I'll
to
put it
them
on.
and show them.
Yeah, I'll put the wide angle camera on and show them, hey, this, and we'll take 45 minutes and walk around the house. And so when we do the walkthroughs, I walk the house exactly the way I inspected it. So we do the same path.
But now
You
you
know,
can stop and tell them what you found.
yeah, right, exactly. So yeah,
Okay,
that's been incredibly helpful. I mean, otherwise, when you get some people that aren't necessarily comfortable with the video, they don't even want to do it. They're just like, hey, send me the report. So in those cases, I'll send them the report. I'll say, hey, let's set up a time tomorrow or in a couple of days. We'll take an hour and we'll just go through the various items and then provide the context that I would have done on a walkthrough, and we can do it through a phone call. So yeah, that's flexible. I can be
if you're
flexible.
buying a house though, gosh, why wouldn't you want to go see what the inspector found,
Right. Yeah. I mean, you see a lot of relocations is usually the
Oh, they're
scenario
not here.
where people can't make it. Yeah, they came to look at the house, and they had to fly back or go back to wherever they're from. And but yeah, I mean, we'll make it work.
Okay, we got another question. What are the guidelines inspectors follow to list hazards in the home? Is there like a typical code sheet, or, you must have a checklist, or do you just review the city code? Like,
Well, yeah. So I mean, I guess in terms of identifying various hazards, I guess I'm looking at if that particular issue would cause any type of physical harm, injury, that sort of thing. So when I'm using hazard in the report, most of the electrical items in my inspection reports would say, do make this specific repair to avoid electrical hazard. Or if there's no carbon monoxide detector, install a carbon monoxide detector to prevent carbon monoxide hazard. You get in situations where there's possible structural failure. So really, I'm just looking at kind of the worst case scenario on what that particular issue could cause, and
yeah,
then
like
the
a
hazards
deck,
based on that. Yeah,
where the railing is shaky.
sure. Deck railing, deck structure. Trying to think other things that would, if you have a sanitary issue or if your sink leaks, okay, you got water leaking under the cabinet or whatever, but sometimes you'll have a leak on the main waste stack where the toilet water is coming in. Then it becomes a sanitary issue, and that becomes a hazard. So I guess the city does designate these type of things as hazardous, and that does guide some of my language within inspection reports to designate the particular item as hazardous. But yeah, each city has things like, for example, St. Paul, they list 3-prong outlets, like just a regular outlet that has 3 prongs in it. If that's not grounded, they designate that as a hazardous item. Minneapolis, they designate that as a suggested correction. So just
So
they're not
see,
doesn't.
that's the advantage, I guess, to use Jeff from Gadget, because you are both Tish inspector and a home inspector. He knows a lot of the city stuff, maybe more than some others.
It's helpful. It's helpful to know. And then sometimes you can, sometimes I'll go through a buyer's inspection and you'll see like especially homes in Minneapolis, where if you find a hazardous item, the city requires that that either the seller repair those items or the new homeowner repair those items. So they kind of say, okay, well, this may be on the Tish report, and then we can look back at the Tish report and be like, okay, yes, and they're planning on fixing this. And so some of that stuff does get repaired based on those cities' inspections.
Well, and one of the things about the city inspections from the realtor side here, a buyer can assume the Tish inspections. And we can negotiate around that if the seller just doesn't want to do them. I mean, they
Right.
can be assumed with a certain form.
Right.
We always want them to do it, but some people are fussy on buying the building. I want to do it my way and be sure it's done right rather than have them slap it together.
Right. And that's a common argument from from buyers that want to negotiate price versus repair, because
Yeah.
you got someone on the way out that, yeah, they want it as cheap as possible. And if you want to get it done the right way, and you're taking ownership of the property, and you want it done the right way.
So
And you
negotiate
want to be,
the price.
yeah, and be able to oversee the repair versus just wondering if it was done right.
Yep. And what about, flippers? You figure, hey, they're going to fix the darn place anyway. Do they need an inspection? What would you say on that?
Yeah. So what I found is that usually I'll have, especially someone that's new to flipping houses, they'll hire me maybe a couple times, and they'll continue to do it, and then they kind of figure out like what the process is,
Oh,
and
what you look at.
and then they continue to become more comfortable with it. So I've had
Yeah,
people that have
that makes
maybe done.
sense.
Yeah, it does. If I've done 3, 4, 5 inspections for them, and then I'll talk to them every now and then. They'll be like, oh, well, we just they might ask me a question about something specific, like, hey, what about this? And I'm more than happy to answer their questions. But yeah, some people just become more familiar with the process and become more familiar with the specific things they're looking for.
And
But
that
yeah, I
makes
mean,
sense because but a normal home buyer, they're only buying a house once every 7 years. They have no idea what to look for unless
right,
they happen to be a contractor. And then that's a hazard too. If you're a plumber, you don't know where to look on the electrical or the other parts.
right, right. And for for someone that's investing, to have documentation of the condition of the property the day that we did the inspection, where they can say, okay, I'm going to go to the seller and I'm going to ask them to negotiate this, this, and this. And I've got the specific documentation and language from the inspector.
Yeah.
And through my,
Third party.
yeah, and when I do the inspection reports, there's a link within my website where you can create a list off the initial inspection report. So you can pull
Oh, I
specific items
love
from the
that.
report, and then you can make your own list, and then you can submit that to the seller and say, hey, I'm not going to share the whole report with you, which some sellers don't even want, because once they have all that data, then they're
They don't
required
want
to
it.
disclose it. Yeah, so you can just take out bits and pieces of the inspection and submit that to the seller, and then they can, the negotiations move forward.
I love that because as a realtor, we're trying to scrape and paste together a report. So that's
Right.
useful. What about radon? Do you do radon inspections?
I do. So I do electronic radon monitoring. So I have
Yep.
machines that I set up in a house. They have to be there for 2 days. The house has to be under certain conditions where just the windows are closed, and temperature conditions have to be between 65 and 80, which is
So,
normal.
on average, how many houses do they have radon? 50% of them
So
or better?
yeah, so every house has radon.
Oh, okay,
Um,
but over the
there's
limit.
Yeah, so some houses have there's the most common house that has the minimal amount of radon is usually slab on grade.
Oh,
Townhomes or slab on grade construction without basements. Those are the homes that you typically have very minimal radon. But I have seen it high levels where people have sub slab heat supply vents or heat supply ducts. So when those vents are built into the slab, then the radon. So those are the only scenarios where I see that type of elevated radon and that type of construction. But I'd say maybe it's like 5, 10, 15, somewhere in there
oh, so
percent.
it's not that many. It seems like every
It's
house
not
I
that many.
owned had radon problem. Every time I got it inspected, I had to do something.
Yeah. So yeah, the measurements for picocuries, that's the atomic measurement unit they use. So if the measurement is above 4 picocuries, then radon mitigation system installation is required or recommended.
Okay. And condos then, do you need an inspection in a condo?
I do. Actually, I do quite a few condo inspections. So yeah, each condo varies, but some condos have their own heating units. Some condos have heating and cooling
True.
systems that are provided by the building. Some have their own water heating systems. Some don't. So I mean, still, you'll still find, you'll find defects in
Oh,
condos.
totally. I just,
Yeah.
I just met a flipper friend of mine. Oh, well, she buys and holds, but she likes condos. We were
Okay.
in a condo today, and the first thing we looked at, and we learned this from another condo she bought, was the shutoff valves.
Sure.
And under the sink and in the bathroom, they were all
Right.
corroded and you couldn't move them. That means
Right.
they need replacement. That's
Right.
$500 a pop for four
Right.
of them, right
Yeah.
there. But
Yeah.
it looked normal, but it wasn't.
Right. Right. So yeah, in addition to, plumbing, electrical,
Yeah,
again, like
they're
I can't get to the units above that. So again, scanning the ceilings with thermal camera. Like
a good
I've been in
idea.
condos where their upstairs bathroom is leaking and it was in a closet and it wasn't like through the drywall, but you could see it on the thermal camera, like, oh, there's something going on, and test it, and there's moisture in the ceiling.
Ah,
And then they got to contact the building management and say, hey, looks like there's something going on upstairs, but I can't be certain because I just don't have access to those spots.
okay, now we just experienced this swiftly moving market.
Yep,
And we all know inspections were sidetracked. People were like, I'll buy it, no inspection. That's the only way they
100%
could get it.
for sure.
Now, and I never suggest that, but it was
Right,
getting desperate, right? You
right.
came up with sort of a workaround, right?
I did.
And what's that called?
I did. So I was doing a walkthrough inspection or a mini inspection. So what I was doing, I haven't did one of these in probably 6 months now. But
Yeah,
what I was doing is we'd arrange an hour, or we'd have the buyer and their agent. We'd book out an hour at a time, do a showing. They'd hang out. I would run around the house and do like almost a buyer's inspection without. The only
but
thing I really
fast.
didn't look at is the attic. And what I do is I'd take pictures of all the defects, and then after I was done, me and the buyer would go outside, look through the photos, and be like, hey, there's this, and then I'd produce a one-page document of kind of the general condition of the property and kind of the big things to look at, and that could give them some insight on whether to move forward or not move forward or what have you. So yeah, that was pretty prevalent for probably from March of 2021 to probably August of 2021, and then it kind of fizzled out. And I was doing a few, but wasn't nearly as many as I was doing
Yeah,
over
it
that.
got crazy there. So, I
It
guess
did,
that's what I like too, Jeff. We in real estate need to be creative with whatever the
for
market
sure,
is. We have to
for
work
sure.
with it because, gosh, they didn't want to forego the inspections, but what could you do? You wouldn't win. But this way, or we started to write offers that had, it's just a look inspection. Nothing's gonna, we want one for our own.
Own information.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's the other part of an inspection. They are really handy. After you buy the place,
sure.
then you can use that to, hey, here's my
Yeah,
handyman list. I can
yeah,
work on
exactly,
these items.
exactly. We'll fix it
Yeah.
list. Yeah, for
Okay,
sure.
we got another question. How do you recommend to vet a good inspector and what to look for? How do you know? Yeah, they should belong to one of those associations because then you
Yeah,
know they're getting CEs.
yep. Belong to a home inspection organization if they do have licensing through those truth in housing programs. To be honest, the testing that I took to acquire licensing for Minneapolis and St. Paul, that test was more difficult than the national certification test. So that's one way to know that
They're,
they know their stuff or they don't. Google reviews. I don't
yeah.
ask for a ton of Google reviews. I have on some of my newsletters recently, just because I haven't had a Google review in a long time. But yeah, look up their reviews on Google, Facebook, Angie's List. There's all sorts of different areas where you can find customer reviews. Look at their reports, sample reports, and see if they're taking a lot of pictures. I probably have 40 to 60 pictures in each inspection report, and there's probably more in the reports where the buyer's not there. I try to I'll load it up with pictures so they have more context on what I'm describing in the
You know,
report.
Two, I would add realtors, we have, as a licensed realtor, if you are the buyer and you ask me, hey, who should I use for inspection? I cannot give you oh, got to use this guy. I
Yep.
am obligated to give you
Three.
3 names.
Right.
But I actually have a list of about 6. And the reason is they're busy sometimes.
Sure.
And if I
Yeah.
give the list of 6, then
Right.
at least they can call down the line and one of them is going to be able to come in a pretty fast time, because it does
Right.
have to happen fast.
And
What about,
I get, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if, so other things to, because I'll get people that where I can't help them, and then I will try to recommend someone. I'll say, hey, I try to say, hey, make sure they use a thermal camera, make sure they use moisture meter, like some things that aren't
oh yeah, ask them
getting on the
that.
roof.
Good idea. Yeah.
Because there's some some inspectors that I find that they don't use any of those tools, and the report that you get is 2 or 3 pages of text, and so all that stuff is stuff to consider.
You need the pictures too. If there is
For sure.
any negotiation, remember the realtor has to negotiate about it. And if we're saying, that thingy in the basement, that it doesn't get communicated well, you guys, we
Sure.
need to take the exact language from the report with the picture so that they
Right.
make sure they fix the right thing.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. What about this one? The older the house, the worse the findings. Is that true?
Yeah, generally, to be
Yeah.
quite honest. Yeah, I mean, it's just if you're in a house that's 100 years old, the wear and tear on that house and settling and various building standard changes and electrical changes and plumbing, all that stuff kind of um, compounds, I guess, in
Yeah,
some
and
respect.
foundation stuff too. I
Sure.
mean, I go in some of those old basements and it's like, ooh, I don't know. There's
Yeah.
rocks here and I don't know. I don't know
Yeah, there's
what that
rocks
means.
here. There's a steel post holding up this. You get in all sorts of those situations, and it's, from my perspective, everything's fixable. So it's just a matter of what the person's resources are, their comfortability with repairing various things. So, yeah, I mean, sometimes I get first-time home buyers in an old 100-year-old house, and you can see their wheels kind of turning, like, wow, is this something we want to take on? And and I'm trying to preface what I'm saying with, like, hey, everything's fixable. Everything's, it's just, again, it's a matter of resources and know-how, and
Well, like
whether it's financial resources. Yeah.
100-year-old house, guess what? One of your floors probably is a little bit
Right.
off or something like that.
Sure.
They're not
Sure.
perfect.
Right.
And if you're going to buy a 100-year-old house, you kind of got to expect that.
Right. And if
But
another thing is for, like, especially investors, is if the house has various issues, structural issues or what have you, and you don't necessarily address those issues, it's good to know a baseline of what the condition of the house is now. Like, for example, I'll see houses that have, like, foundation cracks, and, like, hey, who knows how long that crack could be there for 50 years. You just don't know. Repair the crack, keep your eye on it, and then if it comes up when you're selling the house, you can say, hey, yeah, that crack was there when I purchased the house. I filled it and it's still in the same condition. And here's a photo from 5 years ago to prove that fact. So, yeah.
And one last question then, what about like new construction? Do you do those inspections?
I do those as well. Yeah.
And
Some
they
people,
should do them, right? They should.
you'd be surprised on what you find, and the people who are buying new homes are often surprised on um, on what's found. And oftentimes, I'm in the home prior to them, fixing all the little wall things and stuff like that happen. But you have a lot of different contractors that are going in and out of those houses. So yeah, you'll find plumbing that was not completed, or you'll find various electrical stuff that's not completed. You'll find all sorts of stuff that's not done. Maybe there's an intention to do it, but it's not completed yet, or landscaping's not done that's causing water by the house. I mean, there's a whole load of things that can happen in new construction. But yeah, you should. And if you don't get the inspection prior to moving in on new construction, you should get like an inspection. They call it an 11-month inspection. So your warranty on a new home is typically 1 year. So if you have an inspection prior to that 1 year, then you can identify all the things that are wrong, submit
Get them
that
on
to
the punch list. Yeah.
Yep, and then have the builder come back and fix all those things.
Well, and I can see just in communicating with the builder, if you have a list like that with a picture and a whatever,
Yeah.
it's simple. It's not just, oh, they're making up stuff.
Right. Right. And again, a lot of times the project manager is whoever's overseeing this stuff, they're overseeing a number of different
Yeah.
properties. And can they really go, are they going through and looking at every specific detail? Probably not. But it's just good to have another set of eyes to look at what's going on.
Okay, and then I'm just gonna wrap it up. I'm glad you've been asking questions. We're answering them. So what do you see in store for 2023? Is anything changing in the inspection biz that we need to know about, or everything's kind of stable?
It's kind of status quo. I mean, for buyers inspections in the last few weeks, I think have been down for me, I mean, considerably since the interest rates have been
Oh,
up.
yeah.
So it seems like there's less movement. I've seen this in different transition periods, which I kind of feel like we're in kind of a transition period right now. But then once that transition period kind of plays itself out, then you'll see, okay, well, I've heard rumors that a lot of people are behind on mortgages and things like that, and that may be opening up opportunities for investment purchases and things of that nature. And home buyers that maybe were reluctant to buy with the high prices that we've seen. I know some of the home prices have come up, but the interest rates have really kind of countered that, and you're probably still paying more.
The market,
now.
you're so right. The market is shifting. There's more opportunities for anybody right now to find a house, and not there. You might still be in multiple offers, but it's less likely now. And you got
Right.
time for the inspection, and there could be some negotiating, and there is some dropping prices. So the market is softer, and we're coming into winter here in Minnesota. If you live somewhere else,
Right.
hey, they got to inspect for termites, and there's other things to inspect for.
Yeah.
We
for
don't
sure.
have that here.
Thankfully.
I want to end with my little story on when I bought this townhouse that I'm in right now. I was multiple offers and the inspection wasn't going to get me anything. It was a price war. And
Right.
so I brought my brother in, who's owned an enormous real estate portfolio, tons of properties. He's a boiler man. I brought him over. And of course, we checked and And wouldn't you know it, though, we knew there was mold in the back wall under the deck. We knew it. And but we didn't know to the extent. And after I moved in and everything, I remodeled, and that whole wall was rotted to the bone and had to be rebuilt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, kind of sorry. I didn't have a really good inspection, but I wanted the house anyway because of the location, etc. And that was the only way I was going to get it. But insurance can help. I got an insurance claim in the end.
Oh, that's nice.
I did.
That's helpful.
It was useful, but hey, it happened to me, you guys. That's what I'm trying to say. And I'm
and that's
experienced realtor. And it can happen to anyone. Inspections are good. They help.
Flashing on that deck. That can,
that's what it was. It was somebody ran the garden hose. It turned out they by accident left the hose on the deck, and it ran down the wall. And that's what we found out later.
Holy cow.
And that's how come the insurance sort of kicked in.
Well, that's good. Fortunate.
Yeah, it was a $15,000 wall.
Yeah, well, that'll make a difference.
And new windows, and moved the electric box and the sliding door. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, a little more involved than.
I have a brand new wall now, though.
Hey, there you go. Well, that's awesome.
Okay, so we're going to move on to our Q&A section, and how this works is really more of networking is what this is about. So Jeff is right here for you to personally ask questions. So how this works is, I forgot one thing. I got to tell you how to get in touch with Jeff.
Well, you can go to gadgetinspections.com.
Okay, there you go. Gadgetinspections.com.
My email address is just jeff@gadgetinspections, that's plural.com. Otherwise, give me a call, 651-245-8255.
you see it?
8041. Hey, there we go. And my glamour shot. There we go.
Yeah, his glamour shot, and there he is. I like this, not just an inspection, it's an education.
Yeah.
And that is important. And that's the reason why we need them. Okay. And then I'm just saying here also, if someone buy, sell, invest, that's what I do and coach. If you want a free strategy session with me, LeAnnRiley.com, you'll find a bunch of links. And there is a Facebook community too, Real Estate Investing Made Simple.